Welcome to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard, and this show is all about the unseen stories of students, staff, and faculty members of Durham College. And you may or may not recognize, I'm sure you'll recognize once you hear the voice, of my guest, my lovely guest, Stu Jeffries. So welcome, Stu Jeffries.
Thank you, Katie. So great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, this is awesome. So you are the host of 97.3. Boom.
Right, in Toronto, and have been doing that for the morning show for, I think at last it was 12 years as a single person morning show. So, and doing well, fingers crossed, and knocking all manner of wood. It's all been great. This is I'm closing in on 50 years in broadcasting and radio and television. So
that's amazing.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think it's time for me to go. What it is.
No, that's incredible. That's such a long repertoire of things that you've done.
Yeah,
of activities.
It's been a great career.
Yeah.
Every time it comes to a point where you got to talk about it, or how far you've come, or when you started, and all of that, it really kind of sinks in that it's been an industry that has been unkind to a lot of people. It's been very kind to me, so I'm super fortunate.
100%. I wanted to go a little bit back, though, talking about where you came from. So you started off, what I last could find on Google was that you're a part of a show called Good Rockin' Tonight.
Right.
Started in 1983.
Right, yes.
I believe, yes.
So Good Rockin' started in 83, and that was, Terry David Mulligan was the host at the time, and it was a show done out of Vancouver.
CBC, right?
CBC,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And I was in, it's a video show, and I was while it was on with Terry as the host, I wasn't really too familiar with it. I saw a couple of episodes, but as a radio guy, videos to me, I didn't really like them because I kind of thought, as a lot of people do, that it sort of takes away your sort of thought of the song when you see it performed on TV, or you see it acted out in a different sort of manner. The translation of that song is a bit different. I always kind of like the fact that every song that you play or every song that you hear brings back your own memories. You don't necessarily need to see it. So I was this kind of small sort of anti-video guy.
And it was right when videos were just coming out too. So it's not even like they've been out for a while. This was like fresh, like.
That's right. And people were making strange videos. Like there was some pretty weird stuff. So Terry was hosting that show for about a year and a half. And then, as I say, I was sort of kind of aware of it. And I was working in Regina at the time doing a midday show. And I got a call from the producer. Well, actually, been backtracking even further. CBC in Regina did a show called The Fame Game. And capital cities across Canada did the same show, and it was a Battle of the Band show. And each city would have that province's 4 or 8 best bands, and then they would be judged and move on to a national final, whatever.
Right.
So they needed a host, and there was an audition process at CBC for this host. And I remember at our radio station, they put something up on the bulletin board saying CBC's looking for a host for this show.
You're like, I'm on that.
Well, no. The funny thing was, I was reading it and I was laughing, and one of the guys that I worked with, Dave Mitchell, was walking by as I was laughing at this at the time, and he said, "Are you going to do it?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I'm doing it." And he said, "And if I'm doing it, you got to do it." So we had this little bet. So I went for the audition and got the gig, and so I hosted that show. And then because of that show, the producer of Good Rockin' Tonight in Vancouver kind of hung on to my tape, liked what he saw, and then offered me the job in '85.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then
what happened to the friend? Did the friend never get?
The friend never. No, I know. It's like Dave. I don't know what happened to Dave. We lost touch.
He's like, I shouldn't have told him about the gig. I shouldn't have told him.
That's right. But again, that was funny. He was laughing. He goes, "If I'm doing it, you're doing it." So I thought, okay, well, I guess I kind of owe that to Dave.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Shout
Appreciate
out to Dave.
it.
Shout out to Dave. Oh, that's awesome. And even before that, going way back. Where did you grow up and go to school?
I was raised in Winnipeg. I was born in Richmond, BC. My parents divorced when I was 4, and my mother and her mom and dad lived in Winnipeg, and so she had 4 kids, single mom, 4 kids, so she needed some help. So she, regrettably, loved Vancouver and everything about it. So leaving there to go to Winnipeg was quite a difference and quite a shock. So I was raised there until I was 18, and then I completed a broadcasting course in Winnipeg, the National Institute of Broadcasting.
So you knew right away that you were going into broadcasting. You were born, you're like, I'm going into broadcasting. That is one thing that I'm doing.
Since I was, I could tell you honestly, since I was 7 or 8, I had this love affair with radio, and I don't know what it was, but I love the idea that there was a person coming through a speaker that was in my life, and I didn't even know who this person was, but this person was a part of
and
it.
It spoke to you.
It spoke to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then,
exactly.
yeah.
And I used to always think too that when I was a kid, I used to think, okay, but I'll never get that job because that's for special people. You have to be a special kind of,
right,
whatever. And then I found out there was this broadcasting course, so I took it. And at the end, they sort of gave me this catalog of radio stations across the country, and I put a little tape together, and it was and the tape was on reel to reel. Put a small little reel in a box, sent it off to oh man,
all
must be 30 stations. And I got rejected by
Anyway.
all of them. And one, as fate would have it, I got a call from Gary Lawrence, who was my first program director in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, who called and said, I've got an all-night gig if you're interested. And I'm like, yeah.
But you're like, I don't want to spend all night, but I will because it's something I enjoy, but I have to risk now my sleep and my life.
For sure. I would, and believe me, I said yes to the job before I even hung up the phone. And that started it in 79, and I've been there ever since.
That's awesome. So when you accepted that job, then you were like, I got to change my whole life now. I got to sleep during the day and get up in the night.
And also get used to having no money, because it didn't pay anything. It was the money. The money, I can still see the interview with my program director saying, okay, this is what we're paying. And I'm like, okay.
It's something I love to do, something I sacrifice.
Yeah, so it made I didn't care. So I was broke all the time, but I was happy. And, the all-night shift didn't last too long, but it was in small town Saskatchewan, radio, and on the AM dial, radio was so unbelievably important to so many people. And it was a block format. In the day, it might play some middle-of-the-road music in the day, maybe some country in the afternoon, and then at night, when you got off the all-night show at 6 o'clock, it became a rock show. And so it was all over the place, but it's the community that it served, Saskatchewan and northern Manitoba or whatever, the radius of the broadcast area and the importance it was it was kind of lost on me at first, and then when I look back and think about those people relied on stock quotations, relied on grain information, the total farming community, right? So
it's completely different.
Yeah, completely different. If you missed the agriculture report at 12:10, you'd hear about it, right? Because people needed to know.
For sure. Do they have like almanacs or something?
Well, no, it was you were the almanac. You were like the information source. They even had funeral announcements that they would run at noon and at 6 because there was only a weekly newspaper in the city. So really at 6 o'clock before the rock show, I'd be talking about people who died and then go right into some rock
That's
song.
awful.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But again, full service, so you really understood the importance of it. And I've never forgotten that.
No, that's really important.
It was cool being a part of it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Wow, that's so cool. I love that. That's so amazing to know that.
Especially the power of AM radio. When you think about it now, AM stations are being shuttered all over the place.
Oh no! I turn on my dad's vehicle on the AM radio, and it's all like
exactly.
muffling, staticky, and then like a little voice come up.
That's right. But that was the stuff, man, I fell in love with. Right. So AM radio to me was how I grew up, and so to be a part of it was like, let's go.
And so the station that you worked at,
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. Did that air all over Canada or just Saskatchewan?
No, just in. So it had its broadcast radius was portions of Manitoba and portions of Saskatchewan.
But majority Western Canada. Okay.
And it was 94 on the AM dial, which is a very good frequency to have, so you could hear it for miles and miles. Yeah, it was, and again, pretty good on all the formats that it delivered on too. You really got a good taste. By the time I left, I'd been there for a year and a half. By the time I left, I had done everything. So I was an all-night announcer. I was a midday announcer, morning announcer, whatever. I did weekends. I covered city council.
Like news.
Yeah,
reports.
Reports. I remember going to like a treasury meeting for the city of Yorkton, and I'm like, why am I even here? But you did all of that stuff. So it was a real, not only dues paying, but information paying. You came out of there with a kind of unique diploma into what the business was all about.
Interesting.
So,
and that's good. I guess in smaller stations too, you get a chance to do everything, right? Because if you were to go to a bigger station, they probably wouldn't have you do every single task,
or you might not get hired. And I mean, at that time too, Katie, that's a thing that doesn't happen anymore. No. I was able to send my demo to 1 billion stations and have an opportunity to work and pay my dues in those small markets. Yeah. You can't do that anymore because there aren't any stations in those small markets anymore. And there's 2, 3, 4 broadcast companies that own everything. So your chances
Yeah.
of trying to branch out
Impossible.
become slimmer and slimmer, right? And so the farm team, up and coming announcers, we're never sure where they're coming from anymore because they don't have a chance to get that experience. And that to me is super sad. And it's a disservice to radio and could be one of the reasons, why people listen to radio and look at radio and they go, oh, I can't count how many times I hear from people going, oh, radio, how's that working out for you? As if it's this dinosaur but it's become, because there's so many other opportunities
and platforms
to get your stuff from. Radio needs to step up, and instead of stepping up, they kind of step down in a lot of ways by shuttering stations and not giving future broadcasters a chance to show their stuff, which is, it's too bad.
It's too bad, but I'm in that program right now, so hopefully.
And I mean, there are opportunities. Let's just say that it has shrunk so much,
and it's
right?
changed. Like we now have a film course where we do podcasts instead of radio, so like it's definitely changing currently.
Well, look at even this magnificent setup you've got right here. This thing is this opens up the door to a million different other things, and that really it's a testament to how radio itself has changed. It's become this. It's become okay. You can't just do this. You got to do this, this, and this.
You got to be a jack of all trades.
Got to be a jack of all trades, and then social media interacts with that too. You've got to post. You've got to you've got to be on top of things. You probably, information-wise, are more on top of things than you've ever been before. It's an onslaught of information. The problem is that sometimes that information isn't necessarily always correct. You have to filter through that. But this setup that you have here makes me smile because it's got everything. You can do it all here. It's cool.
Thank you so much, Stu. Amazing. But to get back to you, because you're the...
Why not?
No, I believe that there are many stories that you've had to do remote from your. Sorry. Okay. So there's a story that you said that on one of your. I did some research and I found this one story of you in a waterbed with an elephant. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yes, that was the. That was, oh my God.
I thought I would bring that up because I saw that in one of the interviews that you did, and I was just like, that is the most bizarre thing that I've ever heard of in my life. I just would like you to expand on that.
You could not imagine being there. It was like, so I'm working in Regina, and there is and waterbeds were still a thing. And there was it was Aquarest. Aquarest Bedrooms had just opened up a store in Regina. And
what year is this?
This would be 80, got to be 80 or 81.
Somewhere ago.
And they opened up a store, and they needed an announcer to come and do a remote. Now, the person that was supposed to do the remote, the announcer wasn't available, so it was me. And I know that the guy that owned the place wasn't particularly happy because I was brand new. He wanted the guys that had been there a while. So there was already a lot of pressure to make sure this remote went off okay. So they opened up, his big thing was on opening day, he was going to put an end to the myth he called the China syndrome, which was everybody was concerned that when their waterbeds were full, it would crash through the ceiling down to the floor below, all the way to China on the opposite end of the myth. This is what he thought he was being very clever. Right. So he was going to dispel that myth by bringing in a baby elephant, and the elephant was going to climb onto the waterbed and stand there, and he would show just how sturdy everything was. So
and
here,
to prove his point.
Just to prove his point, yes, to prove his point. So imagine this. They bring an elephant, and apparently the elephant came all the way from Texas, and I was convinced that the elephant had not gone to the bathroom since Texas. So when they open up the gates and let him in, and I don't think you've seen an elephant up close before, but a baby elephant is huge. And the elephant is walking into the studio being led by the trainer, and there's elephant crap everywhere. Like it is just, it's happening nonstop. And so here's me on the air at the time going, hey, the elephant has arrived. The elephant has arrived, and this stench, and it was awful. Then the elephant went to the waterbed, put one gigantic foot on the waterbed, and even before he raised his second foot, the waterbed exploded.
Oh my God.
Water everywhere, water and elephant dung everywhere. And imagine being on the air at the time going, I have no idea what to say right now.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry guys, I was just brought here to do this.
That's right. Let's take a break and we'll talk about this later. It was like an absolute disaster. But those are the those are the things, and there's so many of them. Some are disasters, some are really, really funny, some are just kind of sad. but the moments that you have that you never forget.
That's one of those
That
moments.
is one of those moments, yeah.
That's hilarious. Was there anyone on the team that you still work with today? Or was it like, this
Oh,
is back in Regina?
back in
right? So,
Regina, yeah. You know what? I haven't been in touch with, well, I sort of vaguely in touch with some people through Facebook, but you know, as the years have gone by and, you know, you go your separate ways, you end up, you know, I got married, I have 3 kids, and you just kind of lose touch. I still try and keep track of the sort of core 4 we called it when I was in there, and we still, you know, every so often we'll send messages to each other and say, hey, how we doing? It was like a really, and everybody agrees, it was a pretty special time to be doing that.
That's awesome. That's so amazing. I think, not amazing, sorry, the poo isn't amazing.
No.
The elephant poo isn't amazing. But the fact that you're able to, you know, build those relationships and keep them and kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the guy that owned that Aquarest bedroom warehouse, when I was in Edmonton in radio there, I was at a golf tournament, and it just so happened that he was on the team behind me. And I remember he said, "Are you Stu Jeffries?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know who I am, dude?" And I was like, "No, it's not coming to me." And he said his name, and I don't want to say his name to embarrass him. No. But he said his name, and I went, "Oh my God, Aquarest bedrooms!" And he immediately just hung his head.
That's awful. No, that's awful. And I think also, you had a show, Rockin' Tonight.
Good Rockin' Tonight.
Good Rockin' Tonight. And that was put on by CBC.
Right.
Do you want to go into a little bit about how that came upon?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, like I hosted the show called The Fame Game. The producer of Good Rockin', once Mulligan left the show, was looking for a new host, and he had kept the tape of this Fame Game that I had done, and then he phoned and had said, "Listen, what can I fly you out to Vancouver from Regina? You can host a show. We'll air it." And then he said, "How about?" He said, "We're looking at other people as well too, but we'd like you to be part of the process." So I said, "Sure." The show, doing it, I can still see so many parts of it. The great thing about being young is you're also dumb, right? Where
you're willing to do things.
You're willing to do things that you wouldn't, and you're sometimes too dumb to be nervous. You're just like, okay, this is.
What, is it like adrenaline?
Yeah, I don't know. Or you don't see it as maybe you don't see it as an opportunity. You see it as being lucky. And that you'll do this, but don't worry, just give it your best shot and whatever. I had never thought that I would get the job. I just thought, but they're giving me a chance to do one show. It's going to run nationally. My parents will be able to see what I do. That'll be freaking awesome, right?
Oh, that's amazing.
So got it, did it, and as it turned out, ended up getting the job because of it. Not necessarily because of the audition, but because of the people they just didn't like. And then I ended up doing it for 8 seasons. So yeah, it turned out to be, and branching out into TV from radio was something I did not plan for and didn't expect, and to have done that now and to look back on it, and when I hear people say how important that show was to them when they were growing up, how they would stay at home. I hear so many stories about I was babysitting, and I would always look forward to the kids went to bed and I could watch this show for an hour and a half. And, turn it on and be part of it. And then to hear people say that was such an important part of my youth. When you're in it, you don't even realize it. It's when you're out of it and you look back and people talk about how important it was. It's a really good, it's a really good feeling. Like you were part of somebody's life that you didn't even know.
That's
and
amazing.
Pretty cool, yeah.
I think we actually have a clip of the.
Good
you're gonna have a good flashback here.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
Good.
we can
Can't wait
play.
for this.
Yeah.
Hello all, I'm Stu Jeffries. Now you already know that we're Canada's first national rock journal. This Friday you'll find out exactly what we mean. Not only will you get interviews with and videos by Luba, Belinda Carlisle, Kate Bush and the Cult, but we'll also go to the movies and feature soundtrack music from When Harry Met Sally, Innocent Man and Lethal Weapon 2, as well as Do the Right Thing. Plus, we'll give you a shot at winning soundtrack CDs from Nightmare on Elm Street and announce the winners of our Rick Astley New Kids on the Block trivia contest. Of course, the real trick, we'll be doing it all in 60 minutes. See you here this Friday for Good Rockin' Tonight.
That was a lot of hair ago.
Yeah.
A lot of hair ago.
Where did it go?
Yeah. That, I remember that set like it was yesterday. All those monitors turned sideways, upside down, and stuff like that. And man, that was
so amazing.
That was cool.
Yeah, I was going back in archives. I found that. I was like, I have to play this.
Yeah.
Surprises to do with it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so awesome. You know, one of the things about those promos that we did that I guess it kind of finally clicked in. I was in Vancouver, and I had to go to Montreal for a shoot of some kind. I can't remember what it was. And I remember going into my hotel room, and I turned on the TV. And at the moment I turned on the TV, one of these promos ran. And I went, oh, my God, I've never been to Montreal before, and this is showing on Montreal TV. It was like, it was pretty crazy.
Usually, well, I guess this spot here where you're TV, but I feel like you said you earlier on you're at radio, right? So it's weird to have that kind of point of view of you.
And usually, you know, when radio people branch out to TV or TV people branch out to radio, it never really goes well. I was fortunate that it went well for me. So yeah,
100%. And who are some of the guests that you had on Good Rock?
Oh man, name it. It was like first of all, every Canadian artist you can think of, because of course the mandate on CBC is Canada. And we we had a ton. Wow, and then we were fortunate enough to get international artists as well when they were through town on tour, and then through movie junkets when we started going on those. So we'd be talking to actors and actresses and stuff too. So, I mean, you name it. For me, the best part of it was to meet my heroes and also to be part of bands starting out just like I was. Like I always think of Glass Tiger. Glass Tiger and I kind of started at the same time in terms of our careers taking off, and of course they went into the stratosphere. My career's not like that, but it was like growing up together, and it was kind of cool. Bare Naked Ladies, I always think the same thing. It was sort of the same time we were sort of doing our thing and branching out, and of course now they're international superstars. So being a part of that, looking back, was super exciting, and getting to know them. But also to meet, you know, Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits and do an interview with him. For me, that was it. Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney is. There's a picture that I have with Paul that is just like one of my favorite moments. And I had it framed in the whole bit, and it's me and him together. And every time I look at it, I go, "Oh my God, I talked to a Beatle." And
that is insane.
Yeah, and the day that we did the interview, I'll never forget. It was in Montreal, and he was in the Flowers in the Dirt tour. And the night before, my producer and I were working on questions to ask him, and he said, "Well, obviously you got to talk about the Beatles." And I was like, but it's sort of like, God, he's had to talk about it so many times, he probably doesn't want to. Like, I was kind of scared. I asked him, the first question I asked him, I can't remember what it was. It had something to do with this massive repertoire that you have. How do you decide what songs are going to get the nod when you go live? Right. He answered that question and then took me full circle through his entire career, including the Beatles, in this most perfect 2.5-minute answer. And all the while he's talking, I'm nodding like this, but in my head I'm going, I'm talking to a Beatle.
Yeah, you're trying to get over the fact
that it's a Beatle. Oh my God.
How do I not like freeze up and like?
And he was, what a gentleman, like what an absolute gentleman, and he didn't have to be, and he was really, really cool. And to actually get a picture afterwards. Now, this day and age, we're taking pictures of everything. Back then, not at all. And so if you asked for a picture, it was like, and you got one, it was like pretty special. So to getting that was like, yeah.
That's so amazing. So with that, did you then have obviously the chance to meet so many more other people? But what was one person that you met that you were like, wow, this person or an artist is someone who doesn't get shown the way that they do or whatever?
Right. I would say, Bob Geldof, I would say, who was like with the Boomtown Rats and Live Aid and, and Band Aid.
Live Aid.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go see that in Toronto.
I saw it, and it's incredible.
Amazing.
And the guy that plays Bob Geldof is unbelievable. I don't know what his name is, but oh my God. And then we saw the opening day show a couple of weeks ago, and Bob Geldof himself took the stage afterwards.
So my mom went to that show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom went to that show. That's crazy. Yeah, so she went to the opening night show, and Bob Geldof came up on the show.
Yeah, and somebody heckled him because he was making some Trump comments, and then he said, and the crowd kind of got on this guy that was heckling, and Geldof said, "No, wait a minute. I love this stuff." And he was like waiting to get back to this guy to sort of go back and forth, but then whoever heckled him was suddenly very quiet, and he goes, "Yes, exactly. He's a wanker." And he went to talk about Band Aid and Live Aid. But I talked to him around the Band Aid time, not or Live Aid, not for, I think it was just before Live Aid. And he was a remarkable man, and I was a little bit intimidated because he's got a way about him that's very, I want to say, he looks like he's abrasive, doesn't suffer fools, and
you can't mess with him.
You can't mess with him, and I was just nervous, and he was just so. He was such a gentleman, and so forthcoming with answers and stuff. That he was the one that kind of surprised me, and surprised me in a really good way.
That's awesome. And for getting guests on that show, how did that come about? Was it you who would go out and like seek out the artist? Would the artist come?
No, so we had a production assistant or a producer, whatever. So say the Police are coming to town, or Sting's coming to town. Is he available for interviews? Yes. Will he come down to the studio? Do we have to go down to meet him? How much time do we have? And so on. So interviews were such a key part of that show because it was all about can we bring you? What more information can we bring you behind the videos that we're showing you? So, yeah, it was always key. And you know, different experiences all the time. There's a whole lot of waiting for these guys. The bigger the star, the more you wait with your camera crew and everything. And sometimes you would be there an hour before the interview starts and not get 5 minutes if you're lucky. You know, just the way it worked out. But
that's
yeah.
crazy. I think that's interesting that you say that, because with going off sidetracking to Make-A-Wish, I'm a receiver of Make-A-Wish, and I remember them asking what I want for a wish, and I was like, to meet Harry Styles, and they said, you can, but you're not always guaranteed a time slot for the artist, because the artist is always going. Sorry, so that just reminded me of because the artists, you know, they have a schedule, they have a plan.
And there are times when they're not necessarily down with it. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons from Kiss, which might have been one of the funniest and saddest things I've ever seen backstage, where there were a bunch of contest winners who were told that they would get to meet Paul and Gene after the show was over. So they're standing behind this sort of roped off area. And they're waiting, and so Kiss gets off stage, and now they're going to go shower, they're going to do all that stuff. So you're waiting. They came out on a golf cart and waved to these people as they drove by, and then just disappeared.
And then never seen again.
There were no pictures, no nothing. And all I could think of was these poor people thought that they were going to meet these guys, and it was like, well, yeah, technically you met them, but that was it.
Through a golf cart.
Yeah,
that's awful.
right,
No,
man.
that's awful. That's awful. And I think also, you had the opportunity, to interview a lot of interesting people, and like you said, Bob Geldof. And how did you prepare yourself mentally to be like, okay, I'm meeting these people. How do I?
Again, you get into young and dumb, where you're not too. I mean, the only people I think, maybe a handful of people that I was really intimidated by, or not even intimidated is not the right word, just nervous, and I just wanted to do a good job. All ended up being great. Bob was probably one of the ones that I was most nervous about. Paul McCartney, obviously, and Mark Knopfler, only because I was a fan. But also meeting the bands that I liked. I wanted them to be good as well, and I wanted them to be comfortable. So it was a combination of not only trying to relax myself before doing an interview, but also making you, my guest, relaxed as well, too. And in TV, there's a whole lot of setup that goes on. And you could be sitting there across from this artist you're about to speak with, and there could still be fiddling around with stuff and not starting the interview, and it could go on for a long time. So small talk becomes super important, and sometimes they're not necessarily open to small talk. I had Celine Dion across from me, and I remember she had just won a couple of Junos the night before, and I was talking to her, and she was only nodding. And at first I thought, well, does she hate this, or like, what is going on? And I didn't find out until much later that she does not speak until she has to save her voice. But here's me trying to get small talk going, and she's nodding or shaking her head.
You're like, how do I read from this? Like, how do I take this situation?
Exactly. She hates me. Oh my God, this is terrible.
Spiraling.
That's right. But as soon as the cameras rolled, she was, I'm so happy to be here. And you're like, okay, good.
Like, okay, that's a little much. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's really cool, interesting though.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, and to do small talk with somebody you don't know, you know how painful that can be just in a family situation. When they get to those stardom situations, like it's pretty hard.
100%.
Thank you. The outfield, Your Love, by the way.
Yeah. So
I call that my 80s snapshot song, because there are songs from that decade that you hear and you immediately go, oh, that's so 80s and so good. And the outfield, basically a one-hit wonder. They had a couple of sort of follow-up singles from there, but nothing was as big as Your Love. And it reminds me, that song was playing in Los Angeles when I went down to LA for the very first time to do the Grammy Awards that year. And by doing the Grammy Awards, you were in the press scene backstage, where the artists, I had no idea what happened once they won their Grammy. So they'd be led off stage and they go into a backstage area where they would start with newspaper, then they go into the next section, that would be radio, then the next section would be TV, and so on, and answer questions from the press.
And who was that? What company was that with?
That was with CBC.
Oh, that was
Again,
CBC.
that's
Okay,
with Good Rockin'.
All
Yeah,
Good Rockin'. Okay.
yeah. So
and
we called it backstage at the Grammys.
Awesome, yeah.
And I remember fucking all of my favorite artists coming backstage, and I'm with my microphone and I'm ready to yell a question, and I am drowned out by media everywhere asking the same questions. But it was such an amazing experience. But I remember that song, The Outfield, playing on the radio all the time, going, I love it. So every time I hear it
brings you back to that
I think
moment.
mid-'80s, and I think Los Angeles. Yeah,
that's awesome. So speaking of that, Grammys, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So you went in 80?
I went 85. I always sort of mix up the years, but we went 2 years in a row, pardon me, I think. And it wasn't just for the Grammys. Now that we were there, we could get access to musicians and do a lot of interviews as well.
Oh, that's
so
incredible.
it worked out really well. The Grammys was kind of like that cherry on top. But yeah, you know what? I mean, I was this far away from Michael Jackson at the time, who had an amazing night. Lionel Richie was in front of him, and Lionel Richie's answering my questions, and he is wonderful in trying to get a question to Michael, but Michael wasn't answering, and he was hiding behind Lionel. And Lionel would say he's asking you about Billie Jean or whatever, and he would mumble some answers, so Lionel would have to translate for him. It was a weird scene.
Wait, so I'm just imagining now that you, Lionel,
Michael Jackson,
and then
just
him
like right
hiding
here.
behind you, like
I know.
sneaking in behind Lionel Richie, like that's so
weird. Full sunglasses. He's got that military thing going on. Like it was
That's
weird
hilarious.
stuff. Yeah.
And was this like on a red carpet or a
No, it was like a
backstage?
backstage.
Okay.
You'd have an area. They kind of refined it from one year to another. Before it seemed like you could have, it was almost a free for all. And then the second year it was a little more organized. But it was, bizarre. And if you had a question, if you didn't get it out, somebody else was going to do it for you. So you had to really be on your.
And there were multiple reporters. It wasn't just you either. So it would have been like a swarm.
Yeah, and there you could see
swarm
the
going.
media sort of so-called royalty there too. You know, you would allow so-and-so to ask first. You didn't interrupt them. Like Entertainment Tonight was the big show at the time.
They
so
had first access,
Mary Hart and John Tesh, they would have the first questions. Like it was pretty weird, but yeah.
No, that's incredible. Who else did you see on the red carpet? Like who else?
Don Henley was the first guy I saw. He won a Grammy for Boys of Summer, the video, and it was a pre-show award, and he was late, and he was the first guy that came through the TV section. And I remember about to ask him a question, and I was immediately starstruck. I was like, "Holy cow! Like there's Don Henley. That guy's a legend." And then before I knew it, he was gone. And my producer came up to me and said, "Did you ask him anything?" I went, "Sorry."
I was starstruck.
I was starstruck. I promised to do better the next time.
I was starstruck. No, that's so funny. That's great. I think that having that experience of like, you know, being amongst like so many stars is incredible. I don't know how you would.
It is like you kind of, you know, young and dumb again. But you also, I think it helps you realize that maybe we put a little too much stock into what celebs have to do and say, and why would we be intimidated by, you know, a rock star or a movie star? Like why? It doesn't make any sense anymore than why would I be intimidated by you or you, me or whatever? 100%. It doesn't make any sense. It means we put you up on this
standard.
And yet you and I were all here the same standard. Your life significantly better than mine, but that doesn't mean that you're better or worse than I am. And why can't we just communicate one-on-one and you know? But we're the people who ask the questions are just as much at fault as the people who answer the questions. We put you there, right? Although we have the power apparently to tear you down.
Bad press. No.
Yeah, but I think that we, you know, looking back on it, I wish I wasn't as intimidated and nervous because it's not fair to yourself, right? And you begin to doubt yourself when you really shouldn't, and why would you?
True. That actually brings me to my next question, which is, or my next segment is, Make-A-Wish has been such, because you mentioned people and helping, and so I was like, reminding me of Make-A-Wish, because you are such a strong advocate for the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Love Make-A-Wish, yeah.
So, do you want to tell us how you started becoming a supporter of Make-A-Wish?
Sure. Make-A-Wish some 10 years ago, I want to say. While on the air, we had a bit of money left over at the end of the year that was assigned, I guess, I don't really know how it works, but I think it was assigned to a charity. We needed to know what to do with it. And it wasn't much. My colleague, Steve Parsons, said, let's do something with Make-A-Wish. And he said, I like and then I knew of Make-A-Wish, but not a lot about it. So I dug in a little deeper to find out and went, yeah, that's a great idea. So I think we had $10,000 or $20,000, and what we did was just tried to match it. And we ended up making $40,000 or something, which was beyond what we counted for. And we thought, hey, that was really good. And then I remember sitting in Steve's office, and he said, we should be embarrassed by that. He said, we are a well-known radio station, powerful radio station. We can do a lot more. So let's step this up next year. So we did. And the next year, I think it was, I want to say a couple of 100,000 maybe. And then we were thinking, that's pretty good. And then we were like, nah, man, we can do better. And then as each year went by, it just got better and better. And this last campaign, $660,000 or something like that. And every year, it's a new record. And every year, the generosity of people is like, oh my God. This year, this past year, I mean, it reached levels that we had never seen before. And people were phoning. A wish is $10,000.
Yeah.
People were phoning with $10,000. They were
Yeah.
saying, "Yeah, I'm just going to give you 10."
Yeah.
And it's like, what? And that was like at the beginning of the campaign, and it just kept getting stronger and stronger. And every time I would mention, I think we're going to get a new record this year.
You would break it.
Everybody wants to be a hero, and it's the best kind of hero. They're waiting until the last minute, going, "How much do you need? 20,000. Here you go." It was just unbelievable.
Like bombarded almost.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yes,
In the best way
possible.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I actually was on the show.
Yes, you were. It was great.
The first person for the Make-A-Wish double.
The $1,000 Make-A-Wish minute, which is you play the contest like we normally do. It's $1,000 if you get everything correct. $10 for each correct answer. But whatever you make, we would match and put towards our goal for our Make-A-Wish minute. So, Katie, you were like the first contestant to play the 6:45 edition of that morning, the very beginning of the campaign.
Yeah, because my mom was like, well, we got the email from Make-A-Wish saying, "Would you like to be a part of this campaign?" I was like, "Of course!" Like, what? Of course! Like, this is an amazing opportunity. Like, I would have loved to. So we say yes, and they're like, "Okay, we have 3 options of times for being called: 6:45, 7:45, and 8:45. I think were the times."
Yep.
I was like, I don't want to do the 6:45. I don't want to do the 7:45. I guess I'll do the 8:45. But my mom was like, "No, you have to do the first one. You have to do the first call."
Yes.
Well, I'm not waking up at 6 o'clock to do this, Mom. I'm sorry.
That's awesome.
And I ended up doing it. And I don't regret any minute of it because we have a clip right here.
Okay. Yeah, I got to hear it.
Donate it! Donate all of the money! Donate all of the money!
Katie!
Donate all the money, Stu.
Katie, you are just one beautiful human being, man. I think this is our 10th year of the Make-A-Wish Minute campaign. We have never started with $1,000 winner before. Unbelievable. And that legend is in studio with me right now. Katie, good morning.
Good morning, Stu. How are you?
I'm good. I have to tell you that moment was not only it didn't just catch me by surprise. I understand it caught you by surprise as well too.
Oh, 100%. I was not certain.
So yeah, that's just
awesome.
like a little clip, but that was amazing. That was.
It was so good. It was like we planned it. It
Yeah.
was so good. And to have you win the $1,000, and then to me, which will still always get to me, is just immediately, like all those people that phone in with their donations, you immediately said, "Give it back," right now. And it was like, man, it's just, that gives me chills. It was such a great moment.
I was, because I know, like, from my previous experience, and my viewers, if like they're avid watchers, they would have seen, because I started off this podcast doing my story, and I started off with like having the bleed, then working up my way up to rehab and getting back to where I am now today. And throughout that story, I mentioned my Make-A-Wish and how it had such an impact on my life and how it has brought me to where I am today because of that.
Right.
And so being able to be like, have the opportunity to donate and to put back towards a place that helped me so much was like just unbelievable. So yeah.
And if anybody questions the power of a wish, just talk to Katie. Like if anybody has any questions about what does it do, talk to Katie, talk to Wish Kids, and Wish Kid families, because they will say it changed everything. So, and in your case, we nearly lost you, for crying out loud. And here you are, and here we are talking, and that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And I know, of course, like not everyone has the same outturn or that same
No.
outcome, and it's unfortunate, but the times that it does succeed or does work, it's incredible. Like,
and as they have said too, for those that don't work out, sometimes they're rush wishes. Sometimes it ends before the wish is even granted. Make-A-Wish always talks about the spirit of that child that leaves this earth at that time is a happy spirit, is a happy soul, and it's like, amazing.
No, so I want to thank you, because that is amazing.
I do nothing but say, please call. And
but
people,
it works.
And people do.
No,
so
but
yes.
that's the thing, is it works, and that's all that matters.
Well, I thank you. I'm going to do it until I take my last breath. So.
Well, that is amazing. Yes, thank you, Stu. And also, how much money has Make-A-Wish raised over all the years? I know you said that this past year we raised.
So
you guys raised.
Think we're 2 million. I think we're 2 million. I think.
Over the 10 years.
Over the 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think it's 2.
That's incredible, Stu.
Yeah, I know. We're pretty stoked.
Yeah.
Well, this year when we started, we got off to such a good pace. We thought, wouldn't it be really great if we could do $1 million one year? And it's like, that's a long way to go. But I mean, we're pretty proud. And again, for something that started out as like $20,000 or $40,000 that turned into this, we're pretty proud.
No, that's so amazing. And I actually have an image to play about. I think it's yes, that's you and I.
Very
I
nice.
was at the studio. I was like, yeah, that's you and I at the studio.
Very nice.
With
And this is
Rory.
where Katie and I sealed the deal to do the podcast
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
if I
Actually, you're
remember.
right. You're so right. That's the place where we were like, okay, I have a radio station, and you're like, I'm gonna be on. When do you want me on?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like-
No.
I was like, yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a
That's-
good. That was a great.
Yeah.
God, it was a good moment. It was really, really good.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you so much.
And when I think of the Go-Go's, I always think of like one of those great all women bands that really kicked the door down for others to come through. Go-Go's, I mean, even before that, Joan Jett and the Runaways, like there were so few. And then for the Go-Go's came on, like, again, kicking down the door, and you didn't really realize how influential they were until you look back on their career and the songs that they had. And you don't think I really appreciate the vocals of Belinda Carlisle until she went solo. There's like a song called Mad About You, which I think is just amazing. But I heard I Get Weak the other day, and I went, oh my God, I forgot what a great song this is. So I thought, I'm going to throw it in there.
Wonderful, wonderful choice. And I think, yeah, I mentioned I asked my guests every week to come up with their own playlist, and you've been very good at recapping why you chose the songs.
Right.
So I think that's amazing out of your list of songs that you.
Oh, thanks. There's some
Yeah,
that just have to be in there, and
yeah.
Dire Straits is in there. We started the show with
Yeah.
that. It's in there because I just love them. And Mark Knopfler is a guitarist like no other. And although the band's not together anymore, Mark still scores movies and is still, very active and still records to the best of my knowledge. But it was that debut album from Dire Straits and that song that made me think there's something new coming, and it's pretty good. So
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That is amazing. And I think also there's Your Love.
Yeah, Outfield. That's the Snapshot song. Yeah, that's right. That's the song that reminds me of Los Angeles for sure. And we're gonna. I know John Fogerty's Center Field is in there too, and John Fogerty's in
Yeah,
there.
that's the one that's gonna be exiting the.
Exiting. Okay, so I'll wait until then.
No,
Before
no,
you.
no,
Oh,
no.
you want to do that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, do it now because when it'll exit and then the show will be done.
Okay.
So you might as well.
So
spoil
John
it, yeah.
Fogerty's Center Field is, to me, a personal anthem. There's something in that song. The line, "Put me in, coach, I'm ready to play," sticks with me in the way that I've always sort of thought of myself as not an underdog. I didn't starting in this industry. When I was a kid, I used to get bronchitis a lot. I would spend a lot of time in bed, and that's when I would spend time with the radio and the love affair began. But my voice wasn't radio ready. And because back then, the very first thing that people wanted in their radio people were a deep voice, and I did not have that.
Like
My
that,
voice is
really,
way up high. When I went to this National Institute of Broadcasting, I thought for sure I would fail the voice test and they wouldn't hire me.
They do a voice test?
They do a voice test.
You're kidding.
So I read
What?
this thing and I thought, this is terrible. They're going to hate me. But I mean, little did I realize what they needed was money, so they would take me. They'd take anybody. And then to graduate and send my tapes out with this super high voice guy, and nobody would hire me and all of that stuff. So I always felt like an underdog. I always felt like I was always fighting for a chance to play. And John Fogerty, all the lyrics in this song, the very first time I heard it, kind of spoke to me as that I am ready to play, put me in. And it's also a song about hope and renewal. And I kind of look at each and every day that way when I wake up. I'm always grateful for what I have, always excited to what the day may bring. And super stoked to know that I'm going to go on the air and talk to some people and maybe make a few people happy today that I don't even know, and and maybe change the course of their day just by playing a song or telling a joke or talking about something or other. That to me is like, that's why I do it.
I listen to 97.3 every single day. When I come to Durham College and I have an 8 o'clock class, I always listen to that on the way home, on the way to school with my dad. And there's always here's something good or something.
Yeah, tell me something good. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you start that? Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a guy named Steve Jones, who was the president of our company. He initially thought of it as something called, how about we do a feature called Toronto the Good? And then we would find a story in Toronto that we could talk about that was good news. And then that's basically it evolved into Tell Me Something Good. Yeah. And we are in a time right now, and actually the time that we started this feature, where the world is probably more divided than it's ever been, right? And it's a mess, and a lot of us are scared. A lot of it because we don't know what's coming next, because the people that are in charge don't necessarily know what's coming next. And every day that we wake up, we wonder, you know, what fresh sort of hell is going to come our way today, right? And we're and I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention before, but it seems to me that it's worse than it's ever been. So never a better time for good news. Yeah, and we have something good, and we. A lot of people don't even know that that's a song, right? There are people going, "That's an actual song." It's Shaka Khan and Rufus, but we do it twice a morning, and it's like I love it because it's just it could be something super small or something really big or whatever, but it starts your day off with a little good news, and it's not.
It doesn't have to be like you saved world hunger.
No, it's just like the smallest thing. Like, and sometimes it's the smallest. Especially, I love the stories of. We were really into during the pandemic. Do you remember the pay it forward, where people would go through drive-throughs and they would say, "I'm going to pay for the car behind me," and then you would see just how far it could go. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That is day changing, and in day changing, we're life changing. And I just don't. And I think. It's our responsibility. You have a microphone. You have a responsibility. You have a podcast. You have a responsibility. So what are you going to do?
Radio station.
Yes, exactly.
But it's sort of like the best radio station and the best rock station.
But with that comes a responsibility. 100%. So what am I going to do? That was Aerosmith and This Is Paul McCartney. And yes, sir, those are great songs. But how about we change a life today or do something a little bit different today? And that's all we're trying to do. And tell me something good's been going on now for years and years. And people that phone in with their own stories is also really good. We just recently looked back at the past 25 years and we said, personally though, if you have an event you want to talk about, the amount of calls we got from people saying my wife beat cancer last year, or it was 2010 and I thought I nearly lost my daughter, but she came back. And it's like, oh my God, like these people have stories, so spread them. And as I always say, good gets good, gets good, gets good, and
pay it forward.
Pay it forward,
100%.
exactly.
This podcast actually started off by that theory of everyone has their own story. I have a tagline that's like, you look in a hallway and all those people in the hallways, they have, each one of those have their own story and their own person. And you wouldn't know that by walking down that hallway unless you ask them or you know.
And we don't know what that story is. And what if that guy that just cut you off in traffic just found out that he got his blood test back and he's got leukemia? What if that person that's not smiling at you when they give you your coffee just broke up with her husband of 25 years? We don't know anything, and yet we're very quick to judge, very, very not so quick to listen, and or even just to understand. And to understand that somebody just might not be having the greatest day of all, and that's why they are the way they are, then understand and have a little compassion. Right?
Well said, Stu, well said. No, actually, okay, I have something else for you.
Oh, okay, good.
It's not, it's kind of...
The good rockin' promos is the highlight, okay? So,
okay, so, sorry. Okay, so this is, okay, hold on. So, here we go. This is a letter for you. You can open it after.
Okay.
This is a little...
I got a lanyard?
Oh, from the station. It's actually from the station.
Oh, awesome.
The station lanyard. But I have, this is the real kicker here, is before the show, I went to go print off some photos. I thought it would be funny, or not funny, but interesting if I sign one for you and then you sign one for me.
Bingo. I am all in. That is so awesome. Check this out. Look at this.
Yeah, here. I think it's
such great pictures.
Awesome.
Beauty.
That's awesome. So yeah, we can sign that after.
Okay, that's
amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. That is awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's clearing your schedule.
You were amazing. It's okay. We can shake. Okay. We can shake.
He cut his hand. You want to share how you cut your hand?
No, it didn't cut. It's like it's surgery. I have. The long story super short, something called trigger finger, and what happens is this finger gets locked, and so sometimes it doesn't unlock, so I walk around like this until it gets fixed. So they just did some surgery to fix that, and it's fine, but it's just a little sore, that's all.
Thank you.
I thought it was important to share.
No, it was. That's what I say. No, it's good. It's okay. It's all good.
It's been great being here. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. And I always have an outro on my show, and you would know this. It's, as always, look on the bright side of life, because Monty Python's song,
Always look on the bright side of life. What a great song.
Anyway, that's awesome. But anyway, always look on the bright side of life, guys. And thank you, Stu, for coming on the show once again. It was amazing.
You're amazing.
Such a pleasure. And